Ms. Walters, would you make an announcement just on the process,
Sure.
please?
Yes, so Mr. Hill is here in an ex officio capacity and he does not count towards the quorum and will not be voting.
And the only ones that can vote are the committees,
The committee.
committee members. I don't want to exclude people. I want to make sure we've got the process right. And we want your input, definitely, and we're glad you're here. And with that, if we could look at the agenda briefly. You got any comments on that? Anything to add? If not, we have a motion to approve.
Motion to approve the agenda.
Second, we need to vote on that. Oh, it's not.
You need to do them. Yeah.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Is there anyone from the public here? Obviously not.
No, members of the public.
Thank you. The next item is the minutes from the April 18th meeting. Have you had a chance to look at those? I know you weren't here.
I was not here for that.
I did not have any comments on that, so I'll move we approve those minutes.
Yes.
Motion to approve the minutes.
All in favor? No unfinished business. We have new business. The first item, we have the board assessment summary. I want to thank Mr. Carl and the staff for putting together the presentation and wanted to go through this. We do have a very full agenda, but I want to have some time to talk both about the assessment summary and also to talk about the new policies that we've got. So if we could start into the the survey results.
Is what we have in our package is the same as what was sent to email to us, or is it changed?
The only issue with what was mailed is that it was cut off. So if you look in your screen, we should have a version that's not cut off.
My impression of just looking through this, that we were on some of these questions, we were very consistent, and on some of them we had a fairly wide divergence of opinion, and I'd like to hear comments, particularly on the ones where we didn't agree.
Lawrence, you go to the first line.
The board supports AlexRenew's mission. We had 4 of us strongly agreed.
If there was an NA, and any of them, it was probably me, because I felt like I had not been on to answer in an informed way. I'm sure that was me.
The board periodically reviews and updates our mission and vision. And we had a 2-to-1, 2 NA, 2 agree and 1 neutral. And I would take that as fairly consistent.
Maybe I was the other NA because I know you guys talked about having done it, but I've been here when it's been done.
It's not something we've done in a while.
I think I might have been the neutral, and I think it's simply because I feel like we started doing it and then it kind of fell off because other things happened. So, and since I've only been on since 2020, so it was a little hard to say, what that periodicity was.
Good points. The board uses AlexRenew's vision and strategic outcomes to drive decisions. And again, I think this is fairly consistent. We had agree and strongly agree. The comments on these were interesting. We could go to the next one. I think these were very positive comments. I didn't really have anything on here that made me pause or maybe wonder about where the thinking on these was coming from. So, anyone have any comments on these? Comments on the comments?
I read the comments, and I walked away thinking our January retreat is very important for a whole bunch of reasons. One, coming out of COVID, the soon-to-be completion of AlexRenew, new board, a whole bunch of things, new CEO. And I just want to make sure we really allocate enough time to do that right. So prep time leading up to it, and then time in session on Mr. Carl. It'll be sometime in January. But kind of what we're
The
looking
fifth and sixth.
at. Yeah,
We'll go through a little primer this evening with Ms. McGee, who's on at the end of the meeting. We have it on the agenda.
so I think I read this and some of the other comments on other sections, and I walked away thinking we got a lot to do in that January session. I've got a lot of great to do. So, fun. Great.
One thing that you and I had discussed last week was, can you go back? Was the comment about AlexRenew's role changing with AlexRenew? And I believe we were wondering what the person who wrote that might have been thinking about the change in the role that comes up throughout the different sections of the survey. And
Well, that would be me.
okay,
And that's, by the way, something I want us to talk about in January. But leading up to that, we're a much more visible organization. And we, part of that is branding. Part of that is a very outward facing building that we're sitting in today. Part of it is AlexRenew that has, sites going on across the city. Leadership we've shown in the water community. Not the same organization that existed when we came up with the vision and mission 5 or 7 years ago. And we can, as a board, decide, do we want to continue on that track? Or do we want to pull back? And I would argue we're in a different spot. Everybody in the city knows about AlexRenew. I joined the board, nobody knew what ASA stood for, except you saw it on sewer covers. And that's both an opportunity and a burden.
okay, well, yeah, maybe we can hold that for the retreat in January.
Yeah.
Because I'm wondering, does being more visible in the community really affect the strategic outcomes that we consider into our decision making? How does that
Think
come into
about
play?
all the things facing the city. Flooding. Granted, we don't do stormwater, we never will. But those two issues are kind of interwoven. Affordability, housing affordability is a big issue in the city right now. We don't do housing, but everybody who owns a home pays a bill. It's our role there. We have a role. Those are different issues that are, I think, initially not central to what we do, woven into it. And again, we can choose as a board to say, no, we're not going to worry about that. Or we can say, no, we will. We have to do this board.
I think Alex knew Scott, it's great, a credibility sense of brand. So the question is, how can we use it to get people to install lower flow devices? Again, so they would say, oh, or do we partner with some of the other utilities to do things? And they might listen a little more because oh yeah, those are the guys who did the straight grade big stormwater project. So we have a bit of a platform that we've built, or you guys built, and say, how could we use it? Be more efficient.
I think that's making more sense to me. And we do have a platform, we've got visibility, and that's thinking how we can use it. I maintain that unless there's a Flint water crisis, most people don't really think about what happens with their sewer and water. That,
People don't think about national defense until they need it.
yeah. But
That's the paradox of public life.
Mhm,
actually.
yeah.
Like with all the flooding right now, all over the world, and what we've had in the city a few years ago is a whole lot more
Yeah.
sensitivity to, okay, what are you guys doing?
And I agree with the idea that because we will, knock on wood, successfully complete AlexRenew, that it gives us some standing to speak about other issues.
I mean, there's a lot of discussion in the community, the water community. Adriana and Becky helped me with this and others as well. The step, what is an anchor institution? What is an anchor? By the way, that doesn't mean we do it, but we're in a role to bring people together to help solve the problem. AlexRenew is in a very unique position as a collector of entities, bring the players together to solve because of our credibility that Mark mentioned, and also just some of our physical attributes too.
Mhm.
So, anyway, that's what I was thinking. So.
Okay. Anything else on this? The next one is on strategy. The board is committed to strategically planning for the future. And I was surprised at the diversity of thought here. Just we had two strongly agree, one agree, and one disagree. And I know we have not done a lot of strategic planning, but I think the decisions we made the last 2 or 3 years have all been very strategic.
I don't remember what I put down. But I think in a sense, again, going back to, we've talked about it, I've 5-7 years since we've done it, so it's committed. Yeah, me would be on it and working on it. The hard thing is knowing, we've talked about it, it's right around the corner.
I think the next question is similar. The board considers effective strategic planning a priority. And we had 3 different answers besides CNAs.
And I think again, like, I don't remember what I put out either. But I think again, I feel like in the past few years, we've been really focused on making decisions about operations, right? Like, how do we get this huge project done and done properly? Let's keep an eye on the rates. Let's make sure things are affordable. Let's deal with keeping the staff safe so that we can continue to function. Whether that's means that we don't think strategically, or just the past 3 years have been crazy and we've had to focus on what we've had to focus on. I'm not entirely sure that this is necessarily saying that we're short-sighted, other than we've had to put up fires in 3 years, right?
Good points. The next one, the board makes decisions in the best interest of those served. Very strong. Any comments on this?
It's called affirmation.
Yes. And the next one is similar. The board considers the immediate and long-term effects of its decisions. I think that's a strong vote. The additional comments, next slide, please. I think these were.
I know the person who contributed to the third bullet there, voice of the customer. We have a lot of people we interact with, right? We have our SAG and we have people we meet when we do the listening sessions, sip and sees. But I don't think they're representative of the average ratepayer. And I wonder if we could explore ways, again, this could be a topic at the retreat, of just once a year, somehow hearing from the average Alexandria resident, probably doesn't even know what we do, who sends us $50 a month. Just, what do they think?
70 or 80.
Or 70 or 80? What do they know? What do they think? What can we do better? What do they need to know? I randomly sort of talk to people I run into. Oh yeah, I like paying that bill. It's the smallest bill I have to pay. That's what they said. Smallest bill I have to pay. It's easy. But it'd be good if there's a way to do that without being too burdensome on anybody, us or them. Just a thought.
That's a good point.
Because our rates have gone up. I mean, we controlled it to a great extent, but they are going up.
Any other thoughts on this? Rest of these over to you.
Okay, we can go to the next section. The board has the capacity to fulfill its role and responsibilities. There's good agreement there. As well as an environment of trust and respect among board members. So in the additional comments, there were some, there's general agreement on the capacity of the board to do its job. There were some questions about the size of the board as well as the diversity of who's represented on the board, both like demographically and also professional backgrounds. And relatedly, some questions around succession planning was raised in a couple of these points. And I think everyone should have seen that that's something that is being proposed to be added to the board roles and responsibilities policy, so that might be responsive to some of these questions around who's on the board and how do we develop a bench of candidates that we think would be good people to add to the board. Any other comments on any of this?
This be topic for retreat. Today, as I was looking at best practices for auditing, some places, in sense, you don't have the skilled governing body for your audit committee, so they pull somebody in from the outside to be on the committee, so we could use committee structure to discuss. So I just board be more than 5 or stay at 5. Should we use the committee structure as a way to accomplish or address some of the issues?
Meetings. Board meetings are focused on strategy and policy. We had some strongly agreed and some neutral. Wonder if any disagreement might have to do with like how long you've been on the board and what topics you've been, considering at meetings.
I'm probably a guilty party here. I consider the board does 2 things. It develops strategy, but it also enables the execution of strategy. You know, I think we'd be an ineffective board if all we did was develop strategy papers. We take it one more step further, the most important step, which is, you know, hiring the team and supporting the team with resources and other forms of support so they are effective. That's execution of strategy. I consider that strategic. So what you could argue, some people could argue, well, that's operations. Well, I argue with enabling strategy. So I was sort of, I can tell I was in that strongly agreed column. But then again, you could argue, well, that's execution isn't strategy, it's operation.
Chalk that one up to ambiguously worded prompt.
No, I brought it up to good
What is
discussion.
strategy?
What is strategy? Yeah, I mean, if all we did was develop strategy, I think we wouldn't have to worry about, does the tunnel get built on time? Are our rates reasonable?
I think some of the comments,
Yeah.
few slides on.
Yeah, let's keep going. Board meetings provide adequate time to ask questions and explore issues. Everybody pretty much agreed on that, mostly strongly. And wow, this is, I think, the only one that we got. All five strongly agrees. Everybody comes to the meetings. So then if we go on to the comments, so most of the comments provided like positive feedback on the meetings, like the preparation for the meetings, the materials, the substantive discussion at the meetings, attendance. But then some of the questions were around, you know, our strategy and policy always a primary focus of the meetings. Some felt that that was not always the case, but nonetheless, you know, the actions and decisions being taken are at least consistent with the strategies, even when the strategies themselves aren't the focus of the conversation.
I think the last two comments are a good pair.
Mhm.
That,
Yeah.
they're not always a topic of discussion, but it's something that we do consider in our discussions.
Was there any comments on that, or we covered it? The last section is really short.
Number 3 is back to, can we back up? Number 3 is back into what our role is, and what our role is going to be. Any changes, Alexandria's role?
Post river renew future.
Yeah.
That sounds ominous, doesn't it? Post river renew future.
Last section is just one question about the board maintaining some financial policies that support AlexRenew's mission. Strong agreement and one NA. Go to the comments. Just everyone feels very positive about the process used. Decisions. Seem like the one kind of question is kind of what John was just saying a minute ago about understanding how the ratepayers view AlexRenew and view their bill. So I feel like maybe we've covered that already, but that was a question in here.
I think the last comment on that, it's one of the most important things we do. That I think the staff effort on watching financial policies and our position is something that is really keeps us on track. I think the board is well aware of that.
I'd also kind of like to comment, you know, this survey really focused on strategic thinking, but we do actually have responsibilities other than strategy. And I feel like that was one aspect that the survey focused on without looking at sort of holistically what we do. I mean, we are responsible for ensuring that not only setting the strategy and setting the policies, but that we're adhering to them, right? So I think our role is more than just strategy. So I know that I was probably one of them that said, I disagree, but that didn't mean I thought that we were doing a bad job. I just think that our role is wider than just strategy.
And then you're going to take this from here.
So again, I think the item 6B and 6C on the agenda are really, I'll give a little overview and then we'll dive into each one of the policies. The initial thought is we've got a pretty new board, and in preparation for our upcoming board retreat in January, we wanted to make sure we went back and made sure that the board roles and responsibilities were clear. And it started with that. It started with board roles and responsibilities. And as we started going through and updating the board roles and responsibilities, we noticed that it had carried over into the committee's policy, and there were inconsistencies between the two. So that had us start looking at the committee's policy. Ethics, we said we would update based on political contributions when we updated our communications policy a few months ago. Financial, we wanted to make sure that got updated with write-offs. And one of the things that we saw that was missing, and Mr. Jenks had sent an email earlier today, was the audit process wasn't clearly defined in the financial policy. So we took a crack at it. By no means are these pressing policies that need to be updated today. They were a starting point to start discussion with governance committee and the full board. Item 6C, board member orientation. We just brought on 2 new board members in the last year. I think going through the last orientation and onboarding went really smoothly. We did it pretty quickly within a week. So we try to structure a policy around that onboarding, and it can be spread out over more of a month period. So we tried to capture that, what we just did with Ms. Hammer's onboarding. And then last year when we broke, item 6C2 was the revisiting of the environmental justice policy. And that's something Mr. Beal asked us as staff to go back and look into to update that policy and bring it back to governance this year. So it's been almost a full year since we last looked at that policy. So we're going to kind of walk through these. If there's comments, we try to structure the slide deck to hit on the main responsibilities. So this is the same deck as you received in your board packet. On slide 21, we're just talking through really what the main board responsibilities are. There were 8 that were identified in the initial draft policy, and then we met to prep for tonight with the governance committee, and we added, if you look at the updated board roles and responsibilities policy, we added the third to last bullet. What seemed to be missing here is, and the comments also led to it in the survey, is succession planning for the board. And you know, council sets our board, council selects our board, but what we can still do as an organization is develop a bench. And we added a bullet to advocate in the community to develop an interest in serving on the board and succession plan to develop a bench of potential board members. We also discussed potentially that might lead to its own policy. How do we do that as an organization? How do we do that? How do we do that as a board? So that's something for the governance committee to consider as we move forward if we want to develop a policy around, just like we did on onboarding, or it could be part of the onboarding policy, part of succession planning as well, built into there. So slide 21, really the main responsibilities of the board, mission and vision. Vision, strategic outcomes, hire and oversee the CEO, our financial, health, and audit, building a board, legal and ethical integrity, and then enhancing our public standing are the main roles and responsibilities that are outlined in that first bit of the policy. One of the things that we saw that was missing from nonprofit boards that we brought into the board duties, and it's the very end, it's the legal duties of board members, the duty of care, duty of loyalty, and duty of obedience, is an area that we brought into the board roles and responsibilities that we felt were missing from a nonprofit board standpoint. And then in addition to that, slide 23, we tried to clean up and clarify what each officer roles was with respect to the board. So we carved out the chair, vice chair, and secretary treasurer roles. which are then summarized here on slide 23. I'll pause there if we want to have any discussion around slides, but really tried to get this cleaned up. And this was our starting point as we started navigating through these policies, which if you look, they really go back to 2010 when they were initially developed.
Yeah.
And didn't receive a lot of updates between initial development and the date of revisions on the policy.
Any comments on what we've seen so far?
So in particular for the board governance committee, this is reflected in the new policy, the roles of this committee, orientation, policy development and updates, disciplinary action support for other board members. You deal with structure, self-assessments, and membership. So it's the board's mechanism for looking after itself. And the board committee, the new policy, it seems a lot shorter, but many of the things that were repetitive for each committee has now been put up front for overall committee protocols. Finance and audit, that committee coordinates the board's financial oversight. So that would include financial policy development and the updates to those policies. Assisting the board in achieving its fiduciary duties that we just went over, oversee the annual budget process, rate recommendations, monitor the budget, recommend rate recommendation implementation, and then of course the annual audit, oversee it, review it, accept it, recommend to the board. Ethics policy, they changed, go ahead.
Mr. Jinks, do you want to talk about some of your comments on that?
Okay, you wanted to.
Oh, yeah, I think this is meant, you know,
I
this
had a lot of comments regarding the finance and audit pieces. Some of it was the language wasn't consistent between the kind of the three places the discussion shows up, and only one place does it say oversee. And the description wasn't overseeing, it was just process, receive something, and that's not. The responsibility currently for dealing with insurance coverage, which so, or was taken out. Choosing recommending the auditors to the board was taken out. And I think that those are not moving in the right direction in regards to having a strong audit function, looking at what best practices are. Internal controls is part of audit. And very often your external auditors will come back with, they found an internal control issue. And it's not just the audit, it's internal controls throughout the financial controls throughout the organization and asset controls. That was, I think, was short shrift. So I think there's work on the language that needs to be done. Posit that kind of the functions as in that have been in the committee's responsibility as far as insurance is really risk management, and internal control and choosing auditors ought to stay. The oversight is what a good audit committee does. And the language was more, and this first draft was more process language. I think if you words carrying out its fiduciary responsibility through the audit committee, it means oversight.
I briefly read it and it caught the same thing. That where the audit committee really comes into play is if the auditor provides a whole bunch of corrective actions. The audit committee that should make sure they get. And that was a little bit referred to obliquely, but I think that has to be really called out. We've been lucky because the audits have been so clean. I have worked in organizations where they are not. So like, what's the process here? There's no urgency to get these changes in right away.
I think, I think we can work with finance and audit, we can get the committee, we can get the financial policy updated for finance and audit committee meeting, which is in November. We can take it, bring it to that meeting if we'd like, and then bring it to the board meeting following that meeting if the time works. There is no huge rush here. Again, as we went through these, it wasn't our intent to start working on all these policies, but when we started on unfurling the roles and responsibilities, it kind of went into more than one area, and then you started seeing inconsistencies in the old policies as well. So, I think for committees, we can work with the finance and audit committee meeting and get feedback or suggestions on some of the updated language. I think the procurement process, we try to capture the finance and audit, the audit piece in the financial policy. The auditors procured through AlexRenew and then brought to the finance and audit committee meeting. So the board doesn't actually go out and procure the auditor. That's how it was written in the past. So we're trying to reflect and get that updated and maybe miss the mark a bit. So we're happy to work with the finance and audit committee meeting to get that updated.
Good.
Okay, for the ethics policy updates, there are really only two major changes. Political activity, as you recall, was in the communications policy before, and it didn't really belong there. So now there is a political activity section in the ethics policy, and it reflects the requirements of the Hatch Act, which aren't as stringent as one might think for anybody who does not get their full salary from a federal grant or it's you can participate in political activity, but you've got to be very clear that you're not representing AlexRenew. So it's in no way inhibiting your freedoms to contribute to political campaigns. It focuses more on not doing so in a way that you're representing yourself as an AlexRenew board.
I have a couple of questions. One is, I was trying to figure out what interfere or affect the result of an election or nomination for office means.
Got it.
You can't do a January 6th while wearing your Alex.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Thanks for clarifying.
Translating into plain English.
That's why it's great to have a lawyer on.
That actually is from the Hatch Act. Language.
But does that mean here, does that mean serving on somebody's campaign committee?
No, okay, interfere with or affect the result of an election or nomination for office. So we're missing, I guess, a word that makes it clear that it's somehow an inappropriate interference, not influencing.
That's what.
Yeah.
Makes sense. And then the bullet beforehand ends with the phrase "or effective." Is that the contract or other matter or effect?
Yeah.
It just looked like there was some.
Yeah, so what I intended there is just to make it clear that if you have an effective contract, or if the matter is set before the board to approve a contract, so it's before and during a contractual relationship, that you can't solicit political contributions, blah, 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 for those vendors, for this material financial interest,
It should be in effect. Is that ineffective?
pending or in effect, sure.
That's
Counselor. The run as a candidate for public office and part of the election.
Yeah.
Now, is that connected to the header at the top of the page?
Yes, it is. So those bullets,
Yeah,
you
those are-
can run as a candidate.
But not use your position.
That's right. Mhm. Yeah, all these bullets are with this header that you'll not use, or the authority, or AlexRenew seal. There's a spelling error there, and it should be stationary E. So any of this to do those bullets.
Don't read anything into the fact that I asked that question. It was one.
Any other questions or wordsmithing on political activity?
I think it'll be a lot clearer when all the print is out.
I think
Really,
we're,
everything hangs off that first sentence.
yes.
Use the authority.
Not use the official
Do
authority
these
to.
things. Yes.
Yes.
It's not saying you can't do that. It's saying that, so.
Right.
So you could, yeah.
In your own, yes, personal capacity, you can do that, just not. Don't use AlexRenew's name or your position as a board member. The other big change was there was some language in the policy that sort of danced around whistleblowing, but it wasn't clearly a whistleblower policy, which the board is required to have. So this is the whistleblower policy.
Should we just assume that the independent auditor language will just address while we're addressing the audit committee and the board's role? in committee's
Yeah.
role?
Yeah, so whatever happens there, we can change the language here.
Particular section.
Next.
So
Financial
whistle,
policy.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah.
The whistleblower protection, is that a whistleblower within the board?
Could be.
Or it could be a whistleblower within the.
It could be, yeah. Particularly if that whistleblower does not feel like they're getting heard by the CEO, or maybe it's whistleblowing against the CEO, that would come to the board. So there's always a mechanism to get to somebody to make that good faith report. And
Also in front, fair and equal treatment. It uses the word equality, and I'm wondering whether the word equity should be
Which one?
Where's that one?
very first page.
Which policy?
It is fair and equal treatment.
What- what- what-
Very
what-
present.
It's on the ethics first page.
Which policy is that?
It's the ethics policy.
Thank you.
It's on the first page.
First sentence under fair and equitable treatment. Equal treatment, sorry.
Change that to equity. Equitable. Anything else?
Maybe just ask above that, under responsibilities of public office, the last bullet. The very end of that sentence, unless they're legally prohibited from doing so. Well, just trying to think of an example where we could not work in full cooperation with our public officials because we're legally prohibited from doing so. The only thing I could think of would be litigation.
Yeah. Existing there, but I can. The only thing I can think of. Confidentiality. But weren't subject to like a legal requirement to disclose. There would be restrictions on what you could disclose that might be confidential to us.
Thank you.
You can take your time and review these, and if you have additional thoughts, we can.
It's 3 and 5. Did you have any thoughts on the responsible financial management?
It's all pretty straightforward until we get to the audit section. Deal with that as we talked about. Separately. I did think in debt management that with you should have been there.
Sorry, are we still on ethics or?
Probably financial.
I think
Sorry, just last comment. It seems like ethics is somewhat straightforward. Mr. Jenks, your comment that I think we got from you, so we can make these changes if it works for Ms. Hammer and Mr. Beal for tomorrow for ethics. I think the only question is on page 4. The board oversees an independent auditor. I mean, the reason the word retains was struck is just because the board can't procure auditor. I guess what's the right word?
Point.
Appoint?
we don't oversee the auditor, don't we sort of oversee the auditing process?
No, you can't oversee the committee. It hasn't, this is only, I haven't been through a complete full round, so I'm still learning. In fact, my discussion with the head auditor is later on this week.
I definitely think overseeing the auditor doesn't make sense because that sounds like we could tell them to do something they shouldn't, right?
Yeah, again, when we went through this, the reason the word retains was struck because I think for us, it seemed procurement wise, but if retains is a fine word, we can leave it as is, it was before, if it works.
I don't
I
think
think
that's right
retains
either.
does come across as a contractual kind of
That's what
word.
we thought.
I think instead of points.
Appoints.
Yeah, so that is basically like when we approve you to sign a contract.
Point or engage.
Yeah.
Point or engage.
Okay. Because we would have to bring the audit contract to the board for approval, most likely. Every time we procure it.
We've done that.
Right. It's just been a few years. So really quick to recap on ethics. Page 1 of 5, fair and equitable treatment, change the word equality to equity. Page 3, a typo on the top. The interference with the result of an election, what was the word we were looking for there? Inappropriately?
Yeah, inappropriate interference with,
Okay,
and then we're gonna change
Effective.
effective to in effect.
yes. And then we just talked about points. But I think with that one, it's cleaned up. We'll have to go through it and do the whole. Because they have to adopt it to bring it to the board tomorrow.
Yeah.
You have to take a motion at some point.
Yeah.
To bring it to the board tomorrow.
Yeah,
I don't know if you want to do it while we're going through the agenda or you
Let's-
want to wait till the end.
let's wait till the end.
So the next one on the slide deck is financial policies we already talked about. That one's gonna be tabled, so we can have a closer look.
And then, and the tabling write-off also. Are we tabling write-off?
It's in the financial policy. I think we should discuss it while we're together, if there's any comments on that.
That's,
So it's the financial policy, we added the annual audit requirements. And tried to add the process in there. It wasn't in there before. And then we deleted the write-off policy. We proposed to delete the write-off policy and then incorporate that into the financial policy. And then we made updates while we did that.
so we want to take financial off of the approval today.
We can discuss.
But we can still discuss it. I think there might be comments on the other pieces that we haven't touched on.
And for the write-off values, you can look at the old policy and see that it was very old, and this was a policy, not in, this was a more like a SOP, it wasn't part of the official policy. But it has figures like the amount remains unpaid after 6 months and the amount is under $50. Well, given the average bill now, it's just that these are obsolete. You would never have a write-off. So these numbers are not, that are in the new policy, are not set in stone. They're trying to reflect what is more accurate as far as what a customer account might look like after 60, 180, and 365 days. And it provides some clear, it's supposed to provide clear guidance as to what CEO can write off and what comes to the board.
Would it be helpful in the policy if we defined the word inactive? What is an inactive account? Maybe it's in there but I didn't see it. Not simply an account that hasn't been paid in 60 years.
No, that's not
Inactive means we've been trying to get this person, right?
correct.
Over some period of time.
Inactive sounds like we aren't serving them anymore. That's correct. But there's a balance.
Like if a business would, I think, move out and there'd be a balance on that. The account gets closed and it's still unpaid.
Their service, their water service has been turned off. We're not serving them anymore, but
Yeah, but I don't think it's definitely not just that we're not serving you anymore because we could shut you down and you're still active. I think it's that it's a closed account but with a balance.
Yeah, I think we want to define that. Because these are important things that we do. We're,
Can we, instead of an active, just a closed account with a balance? Will you be any other inactive?
but we talk about active accounts and the previous bullet talks about active accounts.
Yeah.
I'll let you all.
You could define active and then say inactive isn't anything, doesn't meet the criteria of active. That's easier to do.
Yeah,
The point is, these aren't just accounts that are 60 days old, right? These are, we don't know where they are. Put this in context, Mr. Carl. You need these policies in place pretty soon, I think, right? That there's some urgency with these.
I think for well, no, there is no urgent, again, the changes were just things that they got changed because we either went and started reading them or there are things missing. I don't think this is going to affect anything related to our delinquencies or
Okay.
working with.
I thought
That's,
it might.
certainly, an inactive account is one where they're no longer served, we don't have a phone number for them, their mail is returned, we can't find them. And I think those are ones that writing them off is an exercise of getting them off the books. We're not gonna get the money from them. So,
we'll work, I think we can work on that definition.
Yeah, good.
I think the goal based on feedback tonight, and if there's additional comments from finance and audit, between now and November 13th, we can make changes to the policy, bring it to F&O. I think that'd be the approach that we'd like to employ for this one. If there's more comments tonight, we're happy to take the feedback and start moving this forward.
so do we want to review and approve the first three, the roles and responsibilities, committees and ethics policies?
I think committees has to wait
Okay,
because with committees, there's finance and audits, and I think there's, Mr. Danks, you had comments on both financial, finance and audits. I'm sorry, financial, finance and audit committees, correct?
Right.
So,
okay.
Mr. Beal, I think we would wait on committees and financial. And that would also include the write-off policy. So the write-off policy still stays as this for now. So what you could take action on would be the roles and responsibilities and ethics.
Can we have a motion? Oh,
Too late for me to jump into the comments. All in all, I did like board roles and responsibilities. I thought it was a briefer, tighter document, but here I would like to engage the lawyers in the room. I think we need a preamble. You look at the top of the page. The AlexRenew Board of Directors has the following key areas of responsibility. And then it does a laundry list of what, 8 bullets or so. I think we need just a 1-sentence preamble that states why we do these things. And the reason I'm asking for legal advice is I drafted something. And I would certainly want to hear from the counselors. The Board of Directors is ultimately responsible for the success of AlexRenew in achieving its mission of effective and compliant. Is that true? Are we ultimately responsible?
Vision. Achieving the vision.
You said mission?
I said mission. I mean, for example,
Yeah.
we could do these 8 bullets and be out of compliance and be fiscally insolvent and have all kinds of bad things happening in Alexandria. And we would be to blame, right? The board would be to blame.
We're responsible.
Yeah, because you have the oversight role.
We have the oversight. So you always want to start with the why. Why? Why do we have these responsibilities?
You also have these responsibilities via the Virginia Authorities Act. So there's a little bit of that too.
But I'd like to have a document, hard coded in our policies that says, yeah, this group of 5 folks is ultimately responsible.
Can you say that again?
I'll give you that. If you can, my writing is actually pretty clear. The Board of Directors is ultimately responsible for the success of AlexRenew in achieving its mission of effective and compliant wastewater treatment.
And I don't think it would hurt to cite where that authority comes from.
Yes.
But by the way, I want to make sure the board agrees with that.
I think that's very well
I
written.
would get rid of ultimately. Because responsible is responsible.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
My boss always deletes all the adverbs from everything I write.
Yeah,
So I'm always on the lookout for adverbs that don't actually do anything.
no, it doesn't. It just makes it a little extra. but-
Avoid
No,
redundancy. We're sitting here.
you're right.
Right.
Either you're
But it's
responsible or
like-
you're not.
But other than that, it's a very strong statement.
Yes,
It's really good.
we're
Yeah.
responsible. Yes.
Yeah, we're not just advising and writing strategy papers. We're
What
on
was
the
the,
book.
what was
You
the,
need
the lead
admission
ultimately.
to,
I did the, I didn't write ultimately.
Like, yeah, it's too much.
He's an engineer.
No adverbs.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Thank you.
In regards to roles and responsibilities, comparing it to the original, we talk about ensure the organization's financial health, but we're really not anything here about operational health. And the current policies say something like review and evaluate programs and services. It's one of the board's responsibilities. Which I think goes to the preamble discussion we just had. Responsible for the overall success. If you said something like ensure the organization financial and operational health, review and approval of the annual budget, and I don't have a good sentence here, but get in the phrase review and evaluate programs and services, maybe just a standalone 8 bullet.
Yeah, I agree. By the way, I agree.
you said, Mr. Jinks, you said this was spelled out in the old policy.
Review and evaluation programs and services, I think is somewhere in the old policy.
It's, yeah, it's an ensure.
Financial and operational health, because when you're doing the budget, it's not just for your financial health. It's to make sure you have enough money for maintenance. So that we have safe and reliable operations.
The preamble, and then we'll add back in about the review and approval of programs.
And financial and operational health.
Yeah, we've got financial, operational.
On the Board chair job description talks about it, conducting the CEO's annual performance evaluation. I think somewhere else it talks about the way they've been doing it, which is in collaboration with other board members. So maybe saying coordinate the CEO's annual performance evaluation process in collaboration with board members. And the last thing I had was I thought the legal duties was good to have, but by being at the very end, it was like, oh, by the way, as opposed to moving it up under right after AlexRenew board member job description.
Okay.
Since we're editing this section, I have a couple more. I know the budget does include the rates. So in the fourth bullet where we say ensure the financial and organizational health through the review and approval of the annual budget. I want to say annual budget and associated rates. I mean, we all know the rates are in the budget, but that's what the world sees.
Pretty good with that.
And the bullet after that, and this speaks to what Mr. Jenks was saying earlier about process stuff.
Yes.
I would say oversees the audit and where necessary corrective actions.
Should we write appoints external financial
Yeah.
auditor?
Just, yeah,
Appoints to
we
be
use the same language, but the important part is you're not just accepting the audit, you're committing to the corrective actions. There may come a time where there are corrective actions in an audit.
accept the annual audit and say that one more time, correct?
Commit to corrective actions.
Let's spend a moment on, do you really accept the audit? Is that the right word?
See there,
And commit to the corrective actions.
the audit itself.
Yeah, you receive the audit and you commit to the
Management letter or
Yeah.
some other side letter from the auditors going, and here are the 3 things you need to go work
Yeah.
on.
Yeah, so you receive the audit and commit to the corrective actions.
So Mr. Jinks, you don't make a motion to accept it because it is what it
I-
is. Is it?
yeah. I think that's probably.
You receive it.
Receive it and accept it.
Accept.
But it takes a motion to accept it. I mean, you don't have to accept it.
Finance and
Oh,
audit, you take a motion to accept it and then bring it to the board.
The important point, and I'll let you word it however appropriate, is the board has responsibility for the corrective actions that come out of it. But the most important thing, we have such clean audits, I hope we don't forget that.
Anything else?
I like to be quiet.
No, seriously.
No, I was mostly focused on that particular page. Then I'm good.
So do we want to move the approval of the board roles, responsibilities and the ethics policy updates?
So moved.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Yeah. As discussed, as amended.
Okay, two new policies that we brought to governance committee this evening were orientation. So we'll spend a moment going through that, but it really defines the orientation process for the orientation meetings. As we just used this spring, summer, Ms. Hammer, and then also lists out what's included in our board manual that's uploaded to Board Effect and that you all received a now outdated version of, a few months ago. And then what we tried to do at the very end is help us out as staff and created a checklist. So every new board member will receive when they are onboarded, which is at the very end of that policy.
You know, it would be helpful in the future to have that policy book be a 3-ring binder or bound with. So when we get a new policy,
Oh, you didn't get the new one?
Yeah, mine was bound.
Hers is a 3-ring binder.
good.
So they're on it.
Something spiral bound.
Yeah.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, that way you can pull out the old policies and put in a new one.
Oh, it was spiral bound. Yeah, it wasn't it wasn't a, oh,
It is spiral.
I think it's a spiral,
Mm,
but I don't remember. Is that home?
We can certainly update that.
but it's- but
This is all really good. It tracks with, what my orientation was like. My only comment was, I guess, around the timeframes. And we talked about like the ideal kind of spacing of the meetings and the process. So the current draft says that the process will start shortly after the new member is appointed and then completed prior to the member's first board meeting. So that's kind of like the start and the end. But like, what is that time frame?
It's
In
like the word
practice,
if feasible.
Right.
Or first board meeting.
right?
So you try, but sometimes.
You do not have to do your onboarding in 1 week.
Right. Like, what if? But that could happen. That the appointment would be like right before the next board meeting.
I'm reading, if feasible, orientation will be conducted prior to the member's first board meeting.
Right. No, I have no qualms with that sentence. That sentence is a good sentence. It's a good goal. Just more about like the spacing of the meetings, the pacing. Maybe it doesn't need to be written. It's just, that was my only.
I think that's gonna really depend on the board member.
Yeah.
Schedule.
Yeah.
And their availability or their ability to take time to do these.
Yeah.
Very.
It was difficult to retain and process all the information doing like 3 of the meetings in a row.
I suspect though that it's hard to retain it
Anyway,
until you start
Yeah.
actually sitting in board meetings.
that's probably true. Well, we don't need to add anything. Other than that,
And I know when Mr. Carl sent out his first draft of orientation, but I sent in some additions. I think John sent in some additions, and there are a lot of things that need to be covered.
Yeah, it's a lot, just in general.
I also appreciated how comprehensive it was. All the presentations were very clear.
I don't think the timing needs to be in here, but I think that's something we need.
Sure.
Anything else on orientation?
I think the last policy was environmental justice. We put a lot of effort into this. There was a draft that was floating around last year. Actually, it's from 2021 that we found that the governance committee had made comments to. And we started with that and crafted a brand new version from that draft. Really around what we've experienced as an organization, because, we do already do a lot for environmental justice. It's just not captured anywhere in an official board policy. So there was the thought to bring forth this EJ policy to make it an official action and board policy. I know Ms. Caldarelli and Mr. Beal were originally involved in the first draft back in 2021, and we wanted to update that and make sure that it reflected what we do as an organization and what we can do as an organization.
So, yeah, I apologize, like, I'm coming into this and you guys have been working on it for maybe over a year. I do have some comments. I mean, I think it's so great that you all have been working on this. I think this is really a great start. I think it's missing a couple of things. One is, and sorry, this is like my day job, so I probably know too much about this and it's gonna annoy everyone. But I think one thing that this policy could use is a clearer statement of what the affirmative goal is around environmental justice beyond just avoiding injustice, which is what the top paragraph kind of reads as. And not just like treating everyone fairly, but what is a good outcome look like when if we had an environmental justice policy and then implemented it fully, what would that look like? I was reading, NACWA had a report on environmental justice and the utility context that I was reading, and they had some like sample statements that some of them I thought were really good that could be considered. Like one of the ones they suggested was everyone is entitled to like sanitation and clean waterways at an affordable rate or something. Just like kind of a more affirmative statement of like, what are we trying to accomplish with this? So that was one comment. And then the other is, so there's really two kinds of environmental justice, kind of like in the EJ community. There's procedural justice, which is more focused on process, and then like distributional justice, which is more focused on the real world outcomes. And I think the policy that we have is really strong on procedural EJ and could be strengthened more on the outcomes piece. Like in the list of actions that AlexRenew commits to, most of them are procedural, like talking to people and active listening, and those are all really good. I don't have any comments on this because that's exactly what we should be doing. The one about rate setting is more focused on outcomes. And then the second bullet seems to like acknowledge that we need to figure out what those are, but doesn't do it in the policy. It just says develop and implement guidance on how to include EJ in appropriate programs. And I think it would be helpful to guide that process by developing some more specific goals or actions around EJ outcomes. So those are my comments. I had some kind of wordsmithing comments, but I don't want to get into that right now.
Would you like to defer this and we can work further on it?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh.
It's like, I mean, if it sounds like we're not ready to approve this, that you want to do, we need to do some more work on it.
I would like that, yes.
It's worth doing right.
Yeah.
It's worth doing right. And I like the emphasis on the positive.
Mhm.
We're creating cleaner river. We're creating cleaner water. Creating soccer fields and plazas on the river because of our projects. That should be open to all. And they kind of are, but we should make that a goal. I think, opening up with positive statements instead of, you still, by the way, I think the second and third paragraph, the first and second paragraphs are really good. I mean, that's good, but I think, again, the why should be in the front. Love that. Why do we do this?
So let's work together and work with staff to develop something. If you can, together we can come up with some thought for how we want to revise this
Sure.
and add to it.
Happy to work on it.
Environmental justice is a public value.
Just to kind of give a, like an example of, like an additional action that could be included in the list. I think like identifying existing disparities in either like access to like service or like infrastructure disparities. Like to what extent do those exist in the community? And then because that's what all of this is about, right? Is environmental justice, is trying to make sure everyone is treated equitably. And then so identifying disparities and then developing a plan to address them. Like that's something that I don't see reflected in here. That's kind of like the core of what my work is about. I can write up.
We will work on that. What time frame, I think? Maybe look at this for the next 3 to 4 months. Is that pushing it out too far, or is that good?
No, I don't think it's too far.
Does that work?
Oh, it's fine.
It'd be nice if we got it done before the board retreat.
Yeah.
Sure.
Good.
Yeah, it's very doable.
Okay.
Board retreat, yeah.
So let's go ahead. We need a motion to approve the board member orientation policy.
Move to approve the board member orientation policy.
I second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Good. And we will work on the policy. Thank you very much. I want to thank Calvarelli. We did a good bit of work a year ago looking at these and working with staff. It's been a good joint effort to get these revised.
I'm glad we're picking it up again. I know that we got derailed with, hiring the new CEO and all of the other stuff. So it's- yeah, just small little things. So it's nice to see these getting.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you. Our next item.
Unless,
I think we have one more thing, just this is something that, given particularly that there's a lot of collaboration going on right now and reviewing drafts. Just a reminder that the Virginia courts and the FOIA Council have been talking a lot about use of email and when it might cross the line between, emailing each other versus a public meeting that should be noticed and follow all the procedures. So this flow chart is the current state of the law. And I'll to explain how, once I go through it, how we can make sure that we comply with this while still allowing the ability to work via email, because that's how business often has to be done these days. So if you have, the first question is, do you have more than 3 board members on the email? So that would be like, for example, if we send out the ethics policy and we put all the board members, they give us your feedback. If yes, then you move on to the next question. If no, it's not a meeting. Is the discussion related to public business? And I put the definition in there. And I think you all know the public business is a lot broader than just things you're going to make a decision on. It could be anything that is before the board or will come before the board in the foreseeable future. If it's not related to public business, it's just about like a social event, then it's not a meeting. If it is, you have to move on to the next. And is there back and forth communication over a short interval between 3 members? And the courts will likely hold that's a public meeting. But if there is no back and forth communication, so it goes out to 5 members, but there's no back and forth, or there's only back and forth between 2 members, or that back and forth is over a very long interval, then it's not a meeting. So the bright line between the interval. So let's say an email goes out and you guys are at your computer about the ethics policy, and 2 of you respond right away to the sender of the email, like pretty much instantly saying, oh yes, I want to be in charge of this. I want to work on it. We need to make sure we add this. If that's done in short order, then that's going to be considered a meeting that you'd have to actually notify the public of before you're doing that. So we just wouldn't do that via email. The way around this is that you use blind copy. So if something's coming from Justin or Lorna to the board, she would have in the to line Lorna and then blind copy all the board members. So you can't inadvertently do a reply all. And then it will indicate for feedback, send it only to Lorna, send it to John Hill. So you're only having the ability to provide feedback between two board members or the board, one board member and staff. And then if it's a document that we're working on together and collaborating, then staff can assist in putting everybody's comments into a document, put attribution, send it back out, and we go through this again. So really, all of the emails to the entire board should be using blind copy so that we're not tempted to, or not, take the easy way and reply all and then have a potential public meeting on our hands.
This is very important because I think it cuts to the heart of collaboration, right? Because we do collaborate by email. And by the way, one of the survey results is create more collaboration among us. So let's take a hypothetical. We've got this retreat coming up in January. We're blessed by having a board that is very thoughtful about our business, right? All this great background around the table. Let's say a board member finds an article about a topic, let's say public value, a hot topic, right? Or environmental justice. And that board member summarizes it, maybe pulls a couple other articles along with it and sort of summarizes it into a nice 2 or 3 page memo. And just wants to share it with their fellow board members. So if that board member, say, sends it to Jim, so it's direct to Jim, and blind copies us other 4, that's okay.
Mhm.
By the way, the board member who came up with this paper is not looking for an instant answer, right? Just sharing their ideas and their work. So that's okay. Now, what does short order of time mean? Is that like,
Yeah, and the way they describe it is if it's more like you're sending a traditional letter to somebody and maybe they're responding the next day, then that's not a meeting. But if you're doing it as if it, as if, relatively you're sending something out, somebody's responding, everybody's talking, or more than 3 members are talking and back and forth for like an hour, that's going to be considered a short interval. But between that and like if it's the next day that somebody responds, probably isn't considered a short interval. But they haven't really set a bright line for if it's an hour and a half where you start having a response and then a response on that. So I would say, through using the blind copy, you're going to likely not have that situation where everybody just happens to be ready to comment on this article or what this means to AlexRenew, and do that pretty much as soon as they receive it. Yes, so you can accomplish everything you want to by using blind copy, and then if you want feedback, say you put yourself in the 2 line, send me and me only feedback, send it to Mr. Carl or Lorna.
so let's work this hypothetical all the way through. Let's just, for sake of argument, say I wrote the memo.
Mhm.
Okay, it's on public value, just getting everybody thinking about the concept before the retreat. So I write a 3-page memo on public value, cite a couple of articles. And I really am interested in Adriana's response. So I send it to Adriana. Blind copy everybody else, including Mr. Carl and including council. So far, I'm okay, right? Now, Becky wants to add to wants to react to what I wrote. She can send a response to me directly.
Yeah.
Should she BCC everybody else or not? Can she?
She can, because at that point, it's just 2 of you. But if it's,
If you end up just BCCing everybody on every email, then it's a group conversation.
Yeah, that's right. You gotta explain them. Yeah, what is this, what are they trying to prevent? They're trying to prevent deliberation of the board on an issue that really should be accessible to the public.
Okay.
But yet they understand that work is done via email, as work used to be done by sending things out to fellow board members for consideration. So I think if you think about the purpose of what the Supreme Court has held and what FOIA Council holds, is that don't try to replace having to public notice a meeting by having a work session in,
Yeah.
one day, back and forth. That should be a public meeting.
Yeah.
And everything that you're writing as well is
Yeah.
subject to FOIA.
And, yeah,
So that's something
as
to
it should
always
be.
remember too, yeah. Although there might be some exemptions that would apply.
so it said, what I'd like to have happen, because we have such thoughtful members on the board, is an opportunity for board members to really contribute their work and share it with their board members, fellow board members. Really in advance of the retreat. Because I think there are going to be some big picture issues that are going to come up at the retreat. Public value, affordability is going to be one. Relationship with the city will probably be one. And we're not looking for actionable decisions. We don't need real-time response, 2 or 3 days. And these will probably be big picture kind of papers, I would assume, kind of big picture thinking kind of things. Okay, so it sounds like we can do it.
Yeah.
Just be careful with that reply all,
Yeah.
and you don't have to be too speedy on this.
Well, my
You can be speedy, but just if you do blind copy, then you can have speedy responses from all board members, but they're just coming to you or they're just coming to the one person, and then that can be consolidated. And I mean, that is still deliberation of the board, but it's not all board members playing off each other as you would in a meeting.
And in my previous treasury life, we always had to put pre-decisional at the bottom of the email.
Yeah, well, public business is much broader than decisional. Even the example you give, I would argue that that's not necessarily public business, but what could happen in the replies is that things that might come before the board in the foreseeable future starts getting discussed as an outgrowth of the analysis you provided.
My recollection of similar situations is that when we are discussing things by email, that it is not a rapid fire response. It's more a matter of 1 or 2 or 3 days, because I try to check my email once a day. I'm usually not on it more than that. And I mean, Mr. Jinks had his comments on affordability, and it took me 2 weeks to get back to you because I thought about it for several days. So that if it's a matter of waiting 2 or 3 days between messages, I'm not sure that's really hard to do that.
That is not a public meeting. If it's more than a day, it's not a public meeting.
Okay.
What happens if we inadvertently have a public meeting by email and don't?
Yeah, and there are penalties that can be imposed. They rarely are, but it's more of a negative publicity, lack of transparency kind of thing that you don't want to.
Sure.
Yeah, you'd want to avoid.
I'm not saying that we should ignore it. I'm just saying that, things happen as you're like
Yeah.
kind of doing it from your phone.
And the chances that anybody would even know this are slim. It would be if there was a FOIA request and they find out all this was happening via email. And there have been some cases where some public boards have been found to have illegally had a public meeting via email.
Are there fines?
There are fines. I'd have to look at them. But like I said, rarely get fined much at all for these types of things. It's more of a hit to credibility.
So to operationalize this, if a board member writes a paper, and I, by the way, encourage you all to do that. If there's a topic that you're excited about and want to share with your teammates, send it to me and BCC everybody and Counselor and Gia. I'll be honest.
Yeah, and the reason to copy staff is to make sure that if we get a FOIA request, that staff has all the emails, that we don't have to go and dive into your accounts and start looking for things that might have been exchanged without anybody copied. So it's more of like a best practice to make sure we fully respond without having to, and if anybody's using their personal accounts, have to get into those and don't have to
Do that.
It's best practice to copy Ms. Huff, myself, her first. She's our FOIA officer. So if she's copied, we're
Keep writing thoughtful papers. Got a lot of thinking to do between now and January.
Don't complicate matters. Committees, 2 people on each committee.
Yeah.
And that's,
Yeah, so you
how do
always.
you communicate without there being a majority of
Right.
Really?
Slowly, that would be,
Slowly.
yeah,
Yes. If you need something right away, pick up the phone.
yeah. Yeah, that's a good question, but I would say slowly and maybe just a reminder, no need to, maybe don't respond, well,
So-
this is for discussion purposes later.
So is the phone call a meeting?
You know, you think about it, what it's trying to avoid is deliberation outside of publicly noticed meetings, but you can still pick up the phone. And you can have these, you just can't have them with more than 3 people in a short interval. So you're still able to conduct some business via email and phone. Just trying to draw some line that people don't completely replace public meetings with email deliberations and phone calls.
Okay, good.
Amanda, this was very helpful and actually very reassuring. We have more flexibility than I thought we had.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chairman, Mr. Carl.
So we are preparing, as mentioned, we are preparing for a board retreat. The agenda was circulated a few months back. We have a 2-day board retreat. Lorna, can you get? We have a 2-day retreat planned Friday the 5th, followed by an all-day session on Saturday the 6th. The 5th, we are doing a team building event at Building Momentum. We also like to have a team lunch and discussion around strengths, which I will let Ms. McGee go through. So what we wanted to do this evening at governance is introduce our partnering facilitator, Sally McGee. We've been working with Ms. McGee for the last 3 years. She initially started with us as our partnering facilitator for the AlexRenew Tunnel project, and she's been supporting us since. We thought she understands our mission, vision, and values, and as a precursor for setting up our meeting on January 6th, I wanted to introduce you to Ms. McGee and have her go through some talking points on vision and strategic outcomes, because that's what we will be updating at the retreat. And then also discuss strengths and using StrengthsFinder. Most of staff have done StrengthsFinder. We're going to be looking to the board to also do a strengths analysis and share it with each other and staff. So with that, Sally, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, thank you guys. Can I just give, Justin, I can see you, most of you are really small on my screen. Can you just give me a quick thumbs up that you can see me and hear me? Okay, perfect. I'm gonna go ahead and share my slides here and hopefully I get the right, there. It just shows me as this weird little hologram. I'm not really sure how to change that.
Good.
So we're just gonna go with that right now, if that's okay with you guys. Because what I have is just a handful of slides. I'll turn it to slideshow mode and you'll have me just here in the corner. It's a little funky. Like I said, it's a new setting on Teams that accidentally got hit and we didn't have time to reconfigure before this started. So we're just going with it. All right. So there we go. So I am happy to present to the board. Thank you all for inviting me to today's meeting. What I wanted to do is just run through a couple of quick slides, just really as a primer for the upcoming board retreat that's coming up here in January, and a quick introduction of myself so you guys can start to get to know me over the next couple of months. Just a quick intro slide. My name is Sally McGee. Thank you, Justin, for the introduction. My firm is called McGee Leadership Solutions. I am an organizational development consultant. That's kind of the broader picture of what I do. I am the partnering facilitator for the AlexRenew project, which is part of my day job. I also do strategic planning workshops with organizations. Mainly, I work with mostly multi-billion-dollar, highly complex projects and teams. I am an engineer by background. As you can see from my degrees and locations, I lived in the DC area for about 10 years. I went to Old Dominion down in Norfolk, Virginia. And then I did my master's at the University of Maryland, up on the other side of the Beltway from you guys. I am licensed as a professional engineer in the Commonwealth. certified as a master facilitator, Gallup certified strengths coach, and then for business certifications, I'm a disadvantaged business enterprise, small business, woman-owned business. Just in terms of very quick introduction of who I am and a little bit of background. I wanted to just start with a very quick overview. I'm not going to read it to you. You are all familiar with your existing 2040, AlexRenew 2040 vision and mission, and your strategic outcomes. So, and I wanted to kind of delineate between vision, mission, strategic outcomes or goals, and kind of what is the purpose of each aspect of running an organization. So vision, mission are on this slide. If you have any questions, I can always go back to it if we need a refresher. And then the next slide shows your existing strategic outcomes. So you have 5 outcomes around operational excellence, public engagement and trust, watershed stewardship, adaptive culture, and financial resilience. So my understanding is the board of directors really sets the vision for the organization and the strategic outcomes, and then the staff, the CEO and the staff really define the mission based on the board's input of vision and strategic outcomes. So I wanted to give, like I said, just kind of a real quick overview today at tonight's session, and then give you guys a little bit of homework to think about over the next couple of months in preparation for the retreat, where we're really going to dive in and actually put pen to paper and recreate or take some of the existing content that you have, because what you have is a lot of hard work and a lot has gone into it, some really good content to start off with, but we want to refresh it and look beyond 2040. To do that, the couple of things to think about are really, what is the purpose of a vision statement to begin with? So when we, like I said, we'll talk a little bit more in January about this, but when we look at developing an organization's vision statement, it's important to first start off with, what is it and what does it do for our organization, right? So it is one of the strategic tools of an organization that paints a picture of what's possible. It represents the preferred future state, not the predicted future state. So that's an important distinction there. What we're painting the picture of is your preferred future state. The time frame that I believe that we're looking at is the 2060 vision. So we're expanding from 2040 down to out to 2060. So what does our preferred future state in 2060 look like? It should reflect this organization's, the board of directors, your hopes, your dreams, your aspirations for that future state, right? Now, a lot of organizations interchange or use one word in exchange for the other between vision and mission. So it's important to also make sure we're all grounded on the difference between vision and mission. And so I'm going to walk through this here real quick, and then I'll pause to see if there's any questions. The vision, so our vision is forward-looking. And I appreciated a lot of your comments, just kind of listening in on the past couple of hours of your discussions. What I heard several times was, well, we have to think about the why, right? The why it is that we're doing this. That's the vision, right? The vision is why you do what you do. It describes the results of the actions. Where the mission looks at the actions of today and describes the what and the how you do what you do, right? So those are the different pieces or the components between vision, mission, and strategic outcomes or goals. Many organizations just simply say the goals of our organization. So those 3 kind of components, the why, the what, and the how. And then I have an example, and I'll kind of stop there and see if there's any questions. So I love to have I use NASA as an example because it's so crystal clear the way they have delineated their vision, mission, and then their goals. Is their vision. Now this goes back when Kennedy was the president, so the time frame that this is reflective of was in the 1960s. So the vision at that time for NASA is to be the premier agent for space exploration. Big picture, it's lofty, it's vividly imaginable, right? And then the mission, kind of dialing down, describes what it is that they want to accomplish, the actions of today. So he's, the quote is here, before this decade is out, in the 1960s, The mission was land a man on the moon and return him safely to Earth. And then we dial down, the next level, and that's the how. How do we accomplish this? And they had a number of bullets that led up to supporting the mission, which supports the overall vision. So that's the specific goals that the organization defined. In this case, they defined, the technology and skills that were needed. They established a Mercury and Gemini program. So those are the outcomes or the goals that supported the mission, which supports the overall vision. The other way to think about it or to look at it is what was on the previous slide is the vision is a picture of the mission accomplished, right? So the vision is a picture of the mission accomplished. And this example of NASA shows the mission accomplished, right? Of what they did in 1969 with the photo there. So that's the example I like to use because it pretty well helps to kind of illustrate the difference between vision, mission, and goals. So I'll stop there and see if there's any questions or if that makes sense.
There's a lot of nodding going on.
Okay,
Ms. McGee, and I think we can, well, some nodding.
okay,
We can move on to the
It's not nodding off.
okay.
Right.
Okay, great. Great, yeah, I can't figure out how to see where you guys are on my screen with dual screens in this presentation mode. So thank you for that, Justin. I'm not getting the body language, or Mr. Carl, rather. So in preparation for the retreat, you've got a couple of months to think about this. You've got some good content, like I mentioned, in your 2040 vision, mission, and strategic outcomes. So what I want the group to be thinking about is that distinction between the vision being the why. It is, why do you do what you do? Why does AlexRenew do what it does? The mission is the what it is that you do. That's the implementation of the vision. And then the strategic outcomes is what is the way you have defined that previous slide that I showed. I prefer just to use the word goals. It's a little simpler. The goals of the organization should support the mission and the vision. And that's how we cascade the vision down to all of the organization, right? Within all of the employees that work at AlexRenew, they will then also have specific goals that line up with the organizational goals that support the mission, that support the vision, right? So it's kind of like that pyramid. The goals are the important thing about goals, and what we will be doing at the board retreat is for us as a board, or for you as the board, I just like to include me in this discussion. For us as a group, we need to establish those goals that are measurable and controllable by the organization. Those are kind of the distinctions we need to make sure that we are setting as the board of directors. Is you're passing that on basically to the organization of AlexRenew. So we need to make sure they are measurable and controllable by the team that will then go execute, right? So I heard a little bit during your presentation debrief, or your survey debrief, the distinction between setting the strategic vision versus executing the vision. I believe it's the purpose of the board retreat is to really delineate that distinction, right, of setting the vision, establishing the vision, laying out the outcomes that are measurable and controllable, and then the team executes, right? Mr. Carl and his direct reports and the rest of the organization execute on those goals. And the question for you guys to be thinking about is, how will we know we're successful, right? What will be accomplished by 2060? So that's kind of the thinking to start preparing over the next couple of months is, what does that success look like by 2060? What does the organization look like? And let me slide over here so you can see that question is, what do the future how do future drivers impact the vision, mission, and goals? And future drivers, that's a bigger question for perhaps some white papers or for some discussion kind of leading up to the retreat. But those are the questions to start thinking about. Is I'm going to go back to this one slide, is really articulating the why for the organization, the why do we do what we do? The mission is, what do we do? And then the outcomes are the measurable and controllable aspects that your organization can then execute. So those are the two kind of homework questions to start thinking about. What does success look like, and how do future drivers impact the vision, mission, and goals? So I'll pause there and see if there's any questions or comments. And then part 2 of the homework assignment, as Mr. Carl mentioned, is a Clifton Strengths exercise to do as pre-work. Just stop there for a moment.
Sally, this is John. When we're doing strategic planning, let's all use first names. It'll make things.
Great. Thank you.
Formal board meetings, we've got to be very official, but this is all.
Okay.
technical. I like the way you set up vision versus mission. Let's talk about why for a minute. You know, it's natural when you're doing strategic planning to be kind of almost inward looking. You talk in terms of your organization. And I'm wondering if we might, as we step back and think about vision, put ourselves in the shoes of our stakeholders. You know, our ratepayers, the folks who swim in the river, use the river, the folks who are affected by our streams that we dump into. And really, what do they expect of us? What do they expect of their wastewater treatment authority? And that's what I've been thinking about. You know, Jim, Mr. Beal here, his point, and it's a very valid one, is that, you know, most people don't think about us, right?
Mm.
But
It's because it's a given to them that they have somewhere that they're when they flush their toilets, their water goes somewhere, and it's a given. It's a right. Is that what you're saying? They don't think about us. They see the stamp on the manhole cover.
But
Perhaps.
they would think about us if the river were all dirty. And they would
Right.
think about us if there was a big sewer plant in their backyard, or their backyard, but not their rich neighbor's backyard. They would think about us if our rates were too high. So I'm wondering if, you know, as we think about vision, to start trying to really understand their expectations. What are their expectations? What are, as a city, and we're all, by the way, we're all ratepayers too, right? I mean, we flush our toilets and use this facility. What are our expectations for this institution? You know, it's interesting because I think you always approach strategic planning differently when you put yourself in your customer's shoes.
Mhm.
Just thought, because it helps answer the why question, especially when you're wrestling with things like, you know, environmental justice, affordability, and environmental quality. You know, those aren't inward-looking things; those are outward-looking things. Anyway, just thought.
Yeah, I'm just jotting down a couple of notes there. Mm-hmm.
This is going to be fun.
Okay. It is going to be fun. I'm glad you said that. Yes, it's definitely going to be fun. So part 2, let me just flip back to the slides here real quick. If I get the right screen. Okay, that should say the prep. So you've got the couple of questions to be thinking about, and I think that was a good point. You can think about it from those different perspectives. Is what is the end user thinking about us as an organization when it comes to why do we exist? Who do we serve? Right. So sometimes it's helpful to think about not just the why do we exist, but who are our customers? What do they expect? What are the outcomes that are our drivers? Who are the stakeholders, right? It's to get that kind of broader perspective. Let's see, are you seeing this? I'm now seeing both, I'm now seeing you and my screen. Can you give me a thumbs up that you can see a slide? Do you see the, yes?
Yes, we're good.
Perfect. I'm not sure how that happened, but we're just going to roll with it. So, all right. So part 2 to the presentation is another homework assignment. This one actually is something that you will do in advance, and I will give you some instructions of how to do this. Justin mentioned Clifton Strengths. In my bio, you saw I am a certified by Gallup. If you've heard of Clifton Strengths, it is the formerly known as Strengths Finder. You may be familiar with that in that context. But what we're going to do is, as a board, everyone do the assessment and use that as some inputs for the team building aspect on the Friday of the board retreat. And really, what I have is just a little teaser as to why. Why are we doing this? Why Clifton Strengths? What is the purpose? What does it give us? I did hear some good conversation earlier in your meeting also around wanting to get to know each other better, be a more collaborative team, really open up some communication and gel as a board of directors. So this is a fantastic tool to be using. It's a really quick self-assessment, not self-assessment, it's a self-activity. It's an activity you do by yourself. You do an online assessment, and what it looks like is this kind of color-coded, it looks like your DNA there, color-coded results. If you're familiar with Clifton Strengths, many of you may be familiar with this already because it is a very well-known tool that many organizations are using it. This is just a quick statistic, and then I've got one more little kind of business results slide to show you, and then we'll wrap it up here. But over 90% of Fortune 500 companies are using Clifton Strengths for a couple of purposes: to engage employees and to also boost team performance. Justin mentioned we did the assessment for all of himself and his leadership team, and we're also using it with the leadership team at AlexRenew on the project side, because it helps to open up those conversations of what I naturally do best. It identifies your natural talents, abilities, strengths, and kind of buckets the results into 4 categories. You'll learn more about this in the pre-work. What you get is a color-coded report that basically brackets your results into 4 main categories. And they are the way that we execute or get things done, the way that we influence others. Those are the orange ones. The green ones are the way we think strategically, so the way we process information and make decisions. And then the blue ones are our relationship building themes. So those 4 kind of buckets, there's 34 total. You get your results in ranked order of strength. So you'll have your dominant strengths up at the top of your sequence, and then your lesser strengths down toward the bottom. Just a couple of statistics for those that are more of the analytical types in the room. People who are focused on using their strengths, here's some of the benefits that you can expect out of doing a Clifton Strengths exercise: is 3 times likely to report having an excellent quality of life, 6 times as likely to be engaged in their jobs, almost 8% more productive in their roles, 6 times as likely to do what they do best every day. And then teams who receive strengths feedback have almost 9% greater profitability. So there's really a business case, if you will, for using Clifton Strengths in organizations. And we thought it would be a great tool to use for the upcoming board retreat as a tool for you guys. So last but not least, last slide, and then I'll stop presenting, is I'm going to send instructions to the board this week. It'll be a quick little explanation of basically what I just mapped out for you. You'll get a code and a website to log into. You put the code in and you take the assessment. It's very, very easy instructions. It's about a 40-45 minute type of exercise. So you want to just carve out that time for some uninterrupted time in your calendar. And we figured by the end of October would be plenty of time for you guys to be able to complete it. That gives you about 6 weeks. And with that, I'll stop presenting so I can see you all again. And pop that back out. There we go. All right, hopefully that made sense. It was, I know in the interest of time, I kind of zipped through that a little bit. It's getting late there for you guys. So I just wanted to pause if you have any questions, give you enough of a little bit of a teaser for what we have coming up for the board retreat, and happy to take any questions you might have.
It's very useful, Sally. Thank you.
Yes.
You're welcome.
Some of us have done Clifton Strengths. Has anybody else? Really? You have. Yeah, it's worthwhile. It's worthwhile. Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't sure who that was speaking there, but if you've done it in the past, we can use your old results, unless you did it like decades ago and you want to take it again. Usually your results don't change that dramatically over time. So if you have existing results, then we don't need to invest in another code and have you take the assessment all over again. Up to you.
This was John. It wasn't that long ago, but I'd like to take it again.
Okay. Yeah, we can make that happen.
Yeah, great.
You can be a test case of whether or not your results have changed that much.
I'll just take the one I prefer.
You could do that too.
Yeah, no, I don't think I could find my old score.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I'll just send the instructions to everyone. It'll have, there's 5 of you, right? So it'll have 5 codes with a name assigned. And so it's really easy with instructions, website to log into. You create a quick account and you're good to go. All right. Well, I look forward to working with you guys over the next couple of months and very much look forward to facilitating your retreat in January. I just thank you for the opportunity and happy to take any other questions. And if not, then we'll turn it back over to you guys for the rest of your meeting.
Well, you've got us all interested. What is the team building exercise? Can you tell us? Is it like rock climbing or anything? You can tell her.
It's at Building Momentum. We're doing the build a boat
Okay, good.
exercise where you build a boat and then you can get your competition strength tested by racing each other. So it's a building a boat and then racing.
That sounds like a great activity. It'll be nice and cold too in January.
Yeah, we'll do a lunch there.
It will.
We'll have a little facilitated session to go through the strengths results, what they mean. They'll give you your secret decoder ring to how to understand each other and, go from there and then into the team building, which is about 2.5 hours facilitated by Building Momentum. And it's the,
Right. That'll be fun.
yeah, we did, Mr. Jinks had noted the welding piece wasn't that engaging. So we've used the boat in the past with some staff and they've enjoyed it.
We take the boat out on the Potomac and sail it out.
In January. Yeah.
This will be fun.
Yeah, we figured we could do at the same facility, do the Clifton Strengths exercise in advance. And then Justin, that was a good example of using to see who's the most competitive. But using that kind of as the framework for kind of guiding the activity. And then we can draw upon everyone's results also certainly the following day at the Vision Mission rest of the board retreat on that Saturday.
Thanks, Hallie.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Thanks.
This will be good.
Is there any other business? We have a motion to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
You guys can adjourn, the rest of us have to stay.
Yeah,
Sorry?
we have to
Really,
stay.
2 of you there for me, adjourn.
We have to eat all the sandwiches.
Redefine your idea of a role changing between, but we continue as a change role.
These are pressed, right?
I mean,
I think it's more on us to do that. But we got some difficulty.
Well, I
In fact,
guess tomorrow.
Yeah.
We probably have worked away from the
Oh,
home.
hey.
We could have, in fact, could have said, hey, $1 million in, it's your problem.
We can work on it.
Tomorrow?
See you tomorrow.
All right. We can work with it.
You can. What would?
We can find it.
We're very.
I'll send you both the Word version.
Okay.
The arrow is a lot of time. I'm sorry, I know what the board said.
No, but we can, we'll just leave that to do.
Red line it, send it back, and we'll go from there.
We can always, if needed, jump on the team's thing.
No, I think we're dealing with very constrained solutions.
Mr. Jinks, I'll email you a version of
You already got that.
financial.
Thanks, man.
Yes.
Red line.
Yeah.
We'll do that.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you for the version.
Thanks.
See you tomorrow.
Don't ordinarily,
Great meeting. For our first one together.
we don't ordinarily do meetings after that.
Oh, really? It seems like they're usually Monday, Tuesday.
Well,
And the
Yeah,
next
but
one
we're
is
going to
also
in
on
October
Monday.
too, aren't we? No, in November we're going to.
yes.
Well, we'll be back to.
Yeah.
Take that all back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, in my experience, it's back to back 100% of the time.
It occurred to me, your idea that what do people.
Yeah, my try back to Tiger tomorrow.
Oh, you can get it back right now. I just had one question for you. Would you like to change your password now? Or?
The people.
We changed it now because I tried earlier, so I'm either thumbs up or I'm not doing it right. So having you here will ensure that.
Oh, she did great. She's got great energy.
No, we're not.
Yeah.
We never intended to solve that problem.
Delete.
The people who are like, yeah.
Change your password.
So,
Right, yeah. Or did you go to the?
this was months ago.
We're all closer to.
It's your stuff.
Yeah.
Another good meeting, Mr. Carl. Thank you for all the prep work that went into it. And policy should always be the same.
Oh.
The fact that we now have 3 policies, that's success.
I mean, yeah, I
That is success.
said to Amanda, might have been, I've been going to these for 6 years. That might be one of the more productive ones I've been to from a policy standpoint. Getting the board aligned for the first piece of the retreat, which is good. So
This is all leading to that.
yes, a lot of it is.
It's all leading to that.
So hopefully we keep,
I have not had to sign minutes before.
There'll be someone.
But I'm home. It's not a bad idea, but
360.